Hello, and welcome back to Grave Whispers. Before we begin, feel free to leave a comment and tell me where you're listening from. I love reading every single one. If you enjoy whispers rising straight from the grave, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. Now, get comfortable. Dim the lights if you dare. Relax your mind. Let the outside world fade away. And let's begin. Story 1. I had a very strange dream that blended into real life so smoothly that for a while after waking up, I was not fully sure where the dream ended and the real world began. I know that sounds dramatic, and if someone else told me the story, I would probably assume they were just half asleep and scared themselves over nothing. Maybe that is exactly what happened to me. Maybe my brain took a bad dream and carried the fear into the room with me when I woke up. But it felt different. It felt too connected, too clean, almost like one scene had changed into the next without a proper break. I want to write it down like a short story, but I'm not making it up. This happened to me earlier today. I'm only putting it into story form because that is the best way I can explain how it felt. The night before, I made the bad decision to watch YouTube videos about disturbing movies right before bed. I do not mean normal horror movie reviews. I mean those videos where people talk about the most upsetting, uncomfortable, and disturbing films ever made. I do not know why I do that to myself. Morbid curiosity, I guess. I have always loved movies, especially the process of making them. I like thinking about how fake everything is when you really break it down. Comedy, drama, horror, action, all of it is planned. The blood is fake. The monsters are people in makeup or suits. The explosions are effects. The lighting is placed carefully. The costumes are chosen. The camera is positioned. The actors repeat lines until the scene works. It is all fake, but the images still stay in your head. That has always fascinated me. A movie can be completely artificial, and still, some part of your mind accepts the image as something real enough to remember. You can know the creature was CGI. You can know the actor got up and went home after the scene. You can know the blood was corn syrup or whatever they use now. But if the image is strong enough, it follows you. I think that was the problem. It was not only what the movies were about, it was that I was filling my head with disturbing, uneasy ideas right before trying to sleep. I was basically giving my brain all the wrong material, and then asking it to behave for the next several hours. The last time I remember checking the clock, it was a little after 1 in the morning. I put my phone away, closed my eyes, and drifted off. Then the scene changed. I was in a huge room, maybe an auditorium. It was the kind of place used for concerts or big ceremonies, with rows of people and a massive screen at the front, so everyone in the back could see what was happening. The room felt full, warm, and alive. There were lights everywhere, and even though I cannot remember every detail, I know there was some kind of award show going on. People were being honored one by one. I do not remember what for. Maybe it was for movies, or work, or some other achievement. The details are gone now, but the feeling of the room is still very clear. It was happy. Every time a name was called, the crowd clapped loudly. Some people stood up. There were cheers and smiles and that bright emotional feeling you get at big events when everyone is proud of someone. My mom was in the crowd. She looked like she belonged there, sitting among everyone, waiting for something important. Then she realized my name was going to be called soon, but I was not there. So she quietly got up and walked off to the side of the auditorium. She pulled out her phone and called me. In the dream, I answered. That was when I learned where I was. For some reason that I cannot remember, I was walking alone down a dark road at night. It was around 9 in the evening in the dream, even though in real life I had fallen asleep after 1. I was not in a city. I was not even in a neighborhood that felt safe. I was out in the countryside, on a dirt road with fences on both sides and heavy trees leaning over me. It felt like farmland. There was nothing wrong with farms or farmers. I do not mean that. But being alone in a place like that at night has always scared me. The open land, the darkness, the distance from help, the feeling that something could be hiding behind any tree or fence post. In the daytime, a country road might look peaceful. At night, it feels like the world is too wide and too empty. That was where I was. My mom asked where I was, and I told her I was on my way. I said I would be there soon. I tried to sound calm, like there was no problem at all. I told her not to worry, that I only had to make a left turn up ahead, go up a small hill, and then I would arrive. I was not driving. I was walking by myself at night on a dirt road. I knew I had to get to the awards show, even though the whole situation made no sense. Dreams are like that. They do not explain why anything is happening. They just hand you a mission and expect you to accept it. So I kept walking. I reached the left turn and took it. The road started to rise in a small incline. Not a steep hill, but enough that I had to put more effort into each step. The fences continued on both sides. The trees looked heavier now, their branches hanging over the road, like they were watching me pass. The dark spaces between them looked deep and full. Then I heard something behind me. It was not one single sound. It was several sounds happening together. Scraping, shuffling, panting, low movement in the dirt, like many bodies moving at once. I turned around fast. There was a pack of dogs behind me, maybe 10 or 12 of them. They were not giant, but they were big enough to be dangerous. Every single one of them had glowing red eyes. Not a small reflection from some light source, but bright red circles that looked like they were burning from inside their skulls. They stared straight at me, and they were moving toward me slowly. They were not running. That made it worse. They were stalking me. I have a strange rule in my dreams. I do not know if other people experience this, but I have never been able to run properly in a dream. My whole life, whenever I try to run, my body becomes slow and heavy. My legs refuse to work. It feels like I am moving through water or mud, and no matter how scared I am, I cannot go fast. This dream was no different. I knew I could not run, so I started walking backward up the road. I kept my eyes on the dogs. Their red eyes stayed fixed on me. Their bodies moved low and steady. The dirt under their paws made soft sounds. I knew that if I turned my back, they would rush me. I did not know how I knew that, but I did. Then I noticed something even stranger. Each dog had a leaf floating above its forehead. The leaves were green, and they hovered just above the skin without touching it. They did not bob around. They did not fall. They floated perfectly in place, like they were attached by some invisible string. There was nothing friendly or natural about them. They were not cute. They were not magical in a comforting way. They made me feel sick. It reminded me of that uncomfortable feeling some people get when they look at a picture full of tiny holes close together. That crawling, squirming feeling in the skin. Like your body wants to look away before your brain even understands why. The leaves gave me that exact feeling. Something about their shape, their position, and the way they floated above the dogs' foreheads felt deeply wrong. And somehow, in the way dreams give you knowledge without explanation, I knew what the leaves meant. If I hit the leaves, the dogs would back off. I do not know why. I did not question it. I just knew. One of the dogs came closer, its red eyes burning as it lowered its head. I stepped forward quickly and swung at the leaf above its forehead. My hand passed through the space where the leaf floated, and the dog growled hard enough that I felt it in my chest. But it stopped. Then it backed up a few steps. I hit another one. Then another. Each time the dog growled and pulled back, but none of them ran away. They kept staring at me. Those red eyes stayed locked on my face. They were angry now, but careful, like I had hurt them or broken a rule they did not expect me to know. I backed up the hill, one slow step at a time, trying to keep all of them in sight. I remember thinking, how am I supposed to get out of this? There were too many dogs. I could not run. I could only keep backing up and hitting those floating leaves when they got close enough. But I was going uphill, and they were still coming. I could feel the road behind me without looking. I could feel the darkness around me. I knew that if I tripped, it would be over. Then, suddenly, I woke up. Just like that. The dream ended, and I was awake. Not half awake. Not still dreaming. Fully aware. I was in my bed. I knew I was in my room. I knew I had been dreaming. I sleep on my side most of the time, and I switch sides during the night. At that moment, I was lying on my right side. My left arm was bent under my head, which meant my arm was partly blocking my vision. That detail matters because I could not see my bedroom door clearly. The room was dark. I could barely make out shapes. I knew where everything was supposed to be, but I could not see all of it. And because my arm was in the way, the door was hidden from me. Then I felt it. Someone was watching me. I do not mean a weak little feeling, like when you get spooked after a bad dream and convince yourself there is something in the corner. This was the strongest feeling of being watched I have ever had. It was not just fear. It felt like my whole body knew something my eyes had not seen yet. I once read that if you wake up suddenly in the middle of the night, it might be because someone is watching you and your brain noticed it. I know that probably is not literally true. It sounds like one of those creepy facts people repeat online. But the mind can do amazing things. The body has survival instincts. Sometimes you notice tiny things without understanding that you noticed them. A sound, a shadow, a change in the room. That was what it felt like. My brain was screaming at me that someone was there. I lay completely still. My mind started building the scene before I even moved. I thought, the moment I lift my arm, they will know I'm awake. They will be standing in front of my door, staring at me. And once they see me looking back, they will charge across the room, and that will be it. I tried to be rational. I told myself it was just the dream. I told myself I had watched disturbing videos before bed, dreamed about demon dogs, and now my fear had followed me into the room. I told myself there was nobody there, but my body did not believe me. Every part of me was preparing for the worst. My muscles were tight. My heart was pounding. My breathing was shallow. I felt like a trapped animal waiting for a movement in the dark. Finally, I lifted my left arm. I looked toward the door. Nothing. The doorway was empty. For a few seconds, I stared at it, waiting for something to appear. Nothing did. I told myself to calm down. See? Nothing there. Go back to sleep. I rolled over onto my left side and tried to settle back in. I closed my eyes. I tried to slow my breathing. I wanted to believe it was over. Then I heard it. Two small scratching sounds. They came from outside my bedroom door, somewhere in the kitchen or living room area. My eyes opened. I lay still again. I tried to explain it away. The building settling, a pipe, a sound from outside. My imagination, my brain replaying the dream, anything but what it sounded like. Then a few seconds later, I heard the exact same scratching sounds again. Same rhythm, same place. That was not an accident. Someone or something was out there. I knew I had to check. I did not want to. Every part of me wanted to stay in bed and pretend I had not heard anything. But I also knew I would not sleep unless I looked. If someone was in my condo hiding under the excuse of darkness, then staying in bed would not save me. If nobody was there, I had to prove that to myself. I got out of bed slowly. I was awake, but not fully clear. My mind was still tangled in the dream. I could still see the dirt road, the glowing red eyes, the floating leaves. And now I had to deal with the possibility that there was an intruder in my condo. I looked toward the curtains and noticed a faint light coming through. It was not bright, but it was enough to remind me the world outside existed. Somewhere, morning was close. Still, I had to open the door. Before that, I walked to the bathroom. I turned on the light and looked inside. Nothing. Clear. Then I stepped back toward my bedroom door. I stood there for a second with my hand near the knob. I remember saying something like, "Well, if this is it, here we go." Then I opened the door. The room outside was dark. I stood there listening. Nothing moved. I stepped into the living room and turned on the kitchen light. The sudden brightness felt harsh, almost embarrassing, like the room was annoyed at me for being scared of it. I searched the kitchen first. Nothing. I checked the living room. Nothing. I checked every room, every corner, every place someone could stand or hide. There was nobody inside, no intruder, no animal, no strange figure, no demon dog, no person waiting at the door, nothing. The condo was clear. Relief hit me hard, but it did not make me sleepy. If anything, it made me more awake. The fear had done its work. My body was full of adrenaline now. I went back into my bedroom and checked the clock. It was 4:53 in the morning. That meant I had a little over 2 hours before I had to get up for work. I lay back down, but sleep was almost impossible. My mind kept replaying everything. The awards show, my mom calling me, the dark dirt road, the dogs with red eyes, the leaves, waking up, the feeling of someone watching me, the scratches outside my door. What bothered me most was how smoothly the dream had become real life. It did not feel like I had gone from one thing to another. It felt like I had been watching a movie starring myself, and the scene simply changed location. The fear carried over perfectly. The dream set the mood, and reality continued it without missing a beat. Eventually, the alarm went off. I had not slept much, but I was awake and ready for the night to be over. I got up for work, tired but relieved to see daylight. A plumber was supposed to come to my condo that morning, but I had to leave, so my dad came over to stay behind and hear what the plumber had to say. When my dad got there, I started telling him about the dream. I told him about the auditorium and the awards show. I told him my mom was there and had called me because my name was about to be announced. I told him I was walking alone on a dark country road at night, trying to get there. Then I told him about the dogs with glowing red eyes. When I got to the part about the green leaves floating above their foreheads, He interrupted me and asked if the dogs were Canadian because of the maple leaves. I laughed, because honestly, after the night I had, I needed that. I told him maybe. Then I continued. I told him how I woke up and felt like someone was watching me from near my bedroom door. I told him how strong that feeling was, and how I was convinced that if I moved my arm and looked, someone would be standing there. I told him about hearing the scratches outside my room and how I had to get up and check the whole condo. That was when he asked me, "Did you do the walk around?" I told him yes. I did the walk around, and there was nothing there. Story 2. I had finished my extra coursework that morning, which almost never happened. Usually my assignments dragged into the afternoon, and by the time I closed my laptop, the rest of the day already felt wasted. But that morning, I was done early. I had nothing planned, nowhere to go, and nobody coming over, so I decided to clean the apartment. Cleaning had pretty much become my job at that point. I did not mind it most days, mostly because I was the one home more often. My roommate, Tara, was almost always out. She had classes, work, friends, parties, random plans, and what she liked to call her extracurriculars. I never asked for details because I did not really want to know. We saw each other a few times a week, usually in passing, and most of our conversations were about rent, groceries, or whose turn it was to take the trash out. It was not a perfect roommate situation, but it worked. The apartment was too expensive for me to afford on my own, so I accepted the strange silence that came with living with someone I barely saw. I cleaned the kitchen first, then the living room, then the bathroom. I vacuumed my room, wiped down the counters, washed some dishes that had been sitting longer than I wanted to admit, and took out the trash. By the time I was done, the apartment smelled like a lemon cleaner and wet paper towels. The windows were gray from the rain outside, and the whole place felt quiet in that lazy afternoon way that can either feel peaceful or a little lonely, depending on your mood. My cat, Polly, followed me around the whole time like she was supervising. She was a white short hair with a tiny gray patch near one ear and the attitude of a rich old woman who hated being disappointed. She watched me clean from the couch, from the kitchen island, from the hallway, and sometimes from places she definitely was not supposed to be. Every time I looked at her, she blinked slowly like she was judging my work. Sometime in the afternoon, my phone started pinging more than usual. At first, I ignored it because I assumed it was just memes or someone sending 10 messages instead of one complete thought. But the notifications kept coming, one after another, until curiosity got the better of me. I picked up my phone and opened our Discord group chat. My friends were talking about playing Roblox together. That was not unusual for us. We played random games when we were bored, mostly because none of us wanted to admit that Roblox could still be fun. I scrolled up a bit and saw they were planning to get on Murder Mystery 2. Candace, my best friend, owned a private server, and everyone was already making jokes about who would kill who first. I typed, "Can I join too?" The replies came almost right away. Everyone told me to get on, so I went to my computer, joined the voice call, and opened Roblox. On the homepage, I could see from the Friends tab that 2 of them were already in the game. My cursor hovered over the green controller icon, and the title appeared right away. Murder Mystery 2. I clicked join. The game loaded quickly. Our Wi-Fi was usually good unless the weather got really bad. Outside, rain was already sliding down the apartment complex pavement in thin streams, and the sky looked heavy. If there was thunder later, the internet might act up, but for now, everything was fine. When I loaded into the lobby, my friends were already there, running around, jumping on furniture, and making stupid jokes in the call. I got in right before the first round started, so I did not have to wait long. The game was normal at first. We played a few rounds, laughed, accused each other of lying, and yelled whenever one of us got killed. It was the kind of easy fun that makes time disappear. We played for about 2 hours, though it did not feel that long. I only noticed when I glanced toward my curtains and saw dusk slipping through the gaps. The room had grown darker without me realizing it, and the rain outside had made the window glass look blurry. Candace was the first one to leave. She said she and her mom had to run an errand at the bank before it closed. She said goodbye in the call, joked that we were not allowed to have fun without her, and then disconnected. The rest of us kept playing for a little while longer, maybe 2 or 3 more rounds. Then, one by one, everyone else had to go too. Someone had dinner. Someone had homework. Someone's little brother needed the computer. Eventually, I was the only one left in the call. So I said goodbye, even though no one was really there to hear it, and I left. I was about to close the game, too, when I heard glass crash against tile. It came from the kitchen, followed right after by a sharp cat shriek. I jumped in my chair and turned toward the door. "Damn it, Polly," I muttered. I left my desk and hurried down the hallway. Just like I expected, Polly had knocked a glass off the kitchen island. The white short hair sat on the counter with her tail swaying behind her, looking as innocent as possible. Broken pieces of glass were scattered across the kitchen floor. "You're lucky I love you," I said, staring at her. She gave me a soft growl, like she was the one who had been wronged. I cleaned up the mess carefully. Thankfully, the glass had been empty, so I did not have to deal with water spreading across the floor. I swept the shards into a dustpan, checked twice to make sure I had gotten all the tiny pieces, and dumped them into a separate plastic bag before tossing it in the bin. Then I fed Polly because I figured she had probably been acting out for attention. The little diva hopped down and ate her dinner like nothing had happened. After that, I realized I was hungry too. I had no energy to cook, so I walked back to my room to grab my phone and order food. But the second I stepped through my doorway, I stopped. The game was still open, and a new round was starting. For a moment, I just stood there. I had been sure I was alone in the server. Everyone had left. Candace had left first. My other friends had left after her. But a murder mystery 2 does not start a round unless there are at least 2 players. I sat down slowly and looked at the screen. The map loaded in. It was the bank. That made me feel strange for a reason I could not explain at first. Maybe it was because Candace had said she was going to the bank. Maybe it was just a coincidence. It was a normal map in the game. Nothing special. Still, the timing made my shoulders tense. I checked the player list. There was another avatar in the server. Candace, or at least her account. Her avatar stood in the lobby area of the map. It moved a little, then stopped, then started walking again. I frowned at the screen. I thought maybe her errand had been quick and she had come back without rejoining the voice call. I opened the chat box and typed, "Hi, you're back already?" No response. I waited. Her avatar walked in a slow circle. I typed again. "Do you want to play something else?" Still nothing. I figured maybe she did not have chat open, or maybe she was distracted. It was weird, but not impossible. Sometimes people joined games and then forgot they were in them. Sometimes Roblox lagged. Sometimes Candace messed around just to confuse me. I looked at my tool options and saw I had the gun. That meant I was the sheriff, and she was the murderer. I decided to play the round anyway, even though it felt pointless with only two of us. I walked around the bank map while her avatar stood in the lobby for a while. Then it started moving again, making little circles like it was stuck on a loop. I got impatient. If she was not going to answer, I might as well win the round. I moved toward her with the gun out. Her avatar stopped walking. For 1 second, it faced me. I do not know why, but that made my hand pause on the mouse. Then I clicked. The second I fired, the screen went black. The gun sound played, but it did not finish. It caught on itself, repeating the first tiny piece of the sound over and over again. It was loud and sharp, like a digital stutter drilling into my ears. I flinched and grabbed the mouse. "What the hell?" I whispered. I clicked again and again, trying to find the cursor on the black screen. The sound kept looping. The monitor flashed with static, then bands of color, then black again, like something had hit the screen from the inside. For a few seconds, it felt like the whole computer was shaking, even though I knew it was not. Then the Roblox death sound played. Oof. The game returned to the lobby. My avatar was back at the start. Across the screen, the words appeared, "Waiting for other players." I closed the game immediately. Then I shut down the entire computer. I did not even bother logging out properly. I just wanted the screen dark. For the rest of the evening, I felt uneasy. I knew it was probably a glitch. Games break. Servers bug out. Maybe Candace's account had lagged. Maybe the storm outside had messed with the connection. There were plenty of normal explanations, but normal explanations did not help the feeling in my chest. I stayed out of my room for a while. I curled up on the living room couch with Polly and turned on Netflix. I picked the first thing that looked harmless and let it play, barely paying attention. Polly settled against my leg, purring, which helped a little. The apartment felt bigger than usual, with Tara gone. Every room seemed too quiet, and every shadow near the hallway looked too deep. A few hours later, my phone buzzed. It was Tara. I might come home late, or stay the night at Kate's. Just leave the main key under the rug again. Thanks, Ias, she wrote, followed by 3 pink heart emojis. I stared at the message, feeling my stomach sink. Usually, I liked having the place to myself. That night, I wished she would come home. I did not want to be alone. I thought about texting Candace. I wanted to ask if I could come over, or if she could come to me. I would even bring Polly if I had to. I opened our chat, but before I could type anything, a little typing bubble appeared. Then her messages came in. Fuck. Andy, I think I almost died. I sat up so fast, Polly jumped off my lap. What? What happened? I typed. Candace replied almost instantly. The bank got robbed. We all had to lie on the ground while this person in a mask pointed a gun at us and at the people behind the counter. My hands went cold around the phone. Are you okay? Oh my God. What about your mom? Barely, but okay. We're okay. The robber got stopped. Thankfully. Well, and actually it was more traumatic than that. He got shot at. But that wasn't what killed him. I read the message twice, my heart pounding harder each time. That's fine, you're okay. Should I come over? I sent. Her next message took longer. He stood in the middle of the room, muttering under his breath. He kept saying, all pieces bend and break, over and over again. I stared at the words, all pieces bend and break. I did not know why that sentence made the room feel colder. Then another message came. Then he turned the gun on himself. I swallowed hard. "Stop thinking about it, Candace," I typed. "You're safe now." But she kept going. Her words came out messy, full of typos, like her hands were shaking too badly to type properly. She said she saw it happen. She said everyone screamed. She said the sound was still in her ears. She said she could still see the blood spreading across the bank floor when she closed her eyes. "Candace, stop," I typed. Then I closed the chat for a minute because I could not breathe right. I paced around the living room with my phone in my hand. I felt terrible for shutting her down. She had just gone through something horrifying, and I had made it about my own fear. But another thought kept pushing its way into my mind, no matter how hard I tried to ignore it. If Candace had been in the bank the whole time, then who had been in the server? I opened the chat again and sent one last message. "I'm glad you're okay. Please be safe." She never replied. I barely slept that night. Every small sound in the apartment made me jump. The refrigerator clicking on, rain tapping the windows, pipes knocking in the walls, a neighbor's door closing somewhere down the hall. Polly usually slept at the end of my bed, but that night she kept lifting her head and staring toward my bedroom door. I told myself cats were weird. It did not help. A week passed after that evening. Candace's mom did not let any of us see her. She told us Candace was not in the right headspace and needed time. We all understood, or at least we said we did. After something like that, of course, she needed space. I texted her a few times, but she never really answered. Sometimes the messages stayed unread. Sometimes they were marked as seen, but nothing came back. I tried to stop thinking about the game. I failed. Every time I sat at my desk, I remembered the black screen, the looping gun sound, the bank map, Candace's avatar walking in circles, waiting for other players. One evening, after a full week of avoiding it, I turned my computer back on. I told myself I only wanted to check. That was all. Just check and prove to myself that there was nothing strange. I logged into Roblox and went to the Murder Mystery 2 page. Candace's private server was still there. Empty. I refreshed the page. Nothing. I refreshed it again. Still empty. I did it over and over. It was pointless, and I knew it. My eyes started to burn from staring at the screen. My fingers moved almost automatically. Refresh. Wait. Refresh. Wait. Refresh. I thought about Candace. I thought about her saying the bank robber had repeated that strange phrase. All pieces bend and break. I thought about how her avatar had appeared in the bank map while she was trapped inside a real bank with a gunman. I thought about the gun sound looping on my computer right before she told me what happened. Then I refreshed one more time. I froze. An avatar icon appeared in the private server tab. The little text changed. 1 of 5 playing. For 1 second, I thought maybe Candace was there. Maybe she had logged in. Maybe she was finally ready to talk in the only weird way she knew how. Then I looked closer at the name. It was me. My own avatar was in the server. But I was not in the game. I was sitting on the Roblox page, staring at it. I logged out so fast, I barely remember moving my hands. I shut the computer down and backed away from the desk, as if the monitor might turn back on by itself. After that, I stopped checking. I told myself it would only make me worse. I told myself there was no answer I could find by refreshing a page. But the feeling did not go away. If anything, it grew stronger. I started looking over my shoulder when I walked outside. I hated being alone in elevators. I hated standing near glass doors at night because I always expected to see someone behind me in the reflection. In the apartment, I kept all the lights on until I went to sleep. Polly stayed close to me more often, but sometimes she would stop in the hallway and stare into my room like something was standing by my desk. The worst part is the feeling. It is not a sound. It is not something I can prove. It is just the feeling that I am no longer alone, even when I know I should be. The feeling that some invisible person has entered the room and is standing just behind my shoulder, waiting for me to notice, waiting for me to click something, waiting for me to join. Sometimes late at night, I wake up and look toward my computer. The screen is dark, but I can feel it watching. And every time my phone pings or my laptop makes some small sound, I think about the words on that private server. 1 of 5 playing. I still do not know who was playing as Candace that night. I do not know why my own account appeared when I was not in the game. I do not know what happened in that bank, or why it felt like the game knew about it before I did. All I know is that I have not opened Murder Mystery 2 since, and sometimes when the apartment is silent and the rain starts tapping against the windows again, I swear I can hear that broken gun sound repeating somewhere in the dark. Not loud, not from the computer speakers. Just close enough to make me feel like a round is about to start. Story 3. I was away on a work trip when my mother found him. I was 23 at the time, and after finishing college, I had moved back in with my parents for a little while. It was supposed to be temporary. I already had an apartment lined up, and I was planning to move into it the next month. I kept telling myself that I was in that strange middle place between being a child and being a real adult. I was back in my childhood bedroom, sleeping under the same ceiling where I had once taped posters and stayed up too late texting friends. But I was also paying bills, working, and trying to build a life that was fully mine. Then my father died in the living room chair. My mother found him slumped forward, his face pale and still, foamy spit drooling from his mouth like dirty water spilling out of a broken pipe. That was what came to my mind when I heard the details later. A broken pipe. It was almost cruel because busted pipes had been one of my father's biggest fears. My dad had never been officially diagnosed with any mental health problems. He did not believe anything was wrong with him. If you suggested he worried too much, he would look at you like you were the one being foolish. But my mother and I knew. We both knew he had OCD or something close to it. My whole life, he worried almost constantly. He worried about the cars breaking down. He worried about the air conditioning going out in the middle of summer. He worried about my college tuition rising. He worried about the roof, the locks, the pipes, the furnace, the windows, the neighbors, the bank, the weather, the roads, everything. It was not like we were poor. We were not one bad day away from losing everything. We were not rich either, but we were comfortable enough. There was food in the house, money for bills, and savings for emergencies. Still, my father acted as if disaster was always standing just outside the door, waiting for the first mistake. He checked things over and over. He went into the attic twice a day, once in the morning before work, and once at night before bed. I never really knew what he was checking up there. Maybe the insulation, maybe the roof beams, maybe wires, vents, or shadows. The cars were not locked unless he pressed the button 3 times and heard the horn chirp each time. Toilet seats had to stay closed when nobody was using the bathroom. If we left town for more than a couple of days, the water had to be shut off. The back door was checked again and again at night, even if someone had just checked it in front of him. Whenever my mother or I called him out on it, he would scoff. He would tell us we did not have to worry about those things because he worried about them for us. If we tried to tell him he did not need to be so afraid all the time, he would give us this slow, condescending, okay, like he knew something we did not. That was always the feeling in our house, like my father believed our entire lives were held together by his anxiety. Like if he stopped checking, stopped worrying, stopped imagining the worst, then the world would collapse around us. To him, comfort was dangerous. Relaxing was a mistake. Peace was only the quiet moment before something terrible happened. My mother and I used to joke that his worrying would kill him one day. We always said he would give himself a heart attack. When I found out he was dead, I came home immediately. The drive should have taken 6 hours, but I made it in 4. I cried so hard on the highway that there were moments when the road blurred in front of me and I had to grip the steering wheel just to stay in my lane. After that, everything became numb. It felt like I was moving through a cloud. People talked to me and I answered them. My mother cried and I held her. Funeral arrangements were made. Calls were placed. Messages came in from relatives and old friends. The funeral home was dark and quiet and smelled like flowers, but even standing there, looking at the place where we would say goodbye to him, I still felt like I was floating. I thought grief would be the worst part. I was wrong. 2 nights after my father died, I was lying awake in my childhood bedroom. I had been trying to sleep for hours, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw him in that chair. I had not seen his body the way my mother had, but my mind kept building the image anyway, his pale face, the foam at his mouth, the stillness of the room around him. I was just starting to drift off when I heard my mother's anxious voice outside my door. She told me she was having chest pains and asked me to call an ambulance. My mother had had minor heart problems for a long time. Nothing too dramatic most of the time, but enough for my father to obsess over it. He worried about her heart more than anything. At one point, he made her go to the doctor almost every week. Each visit was supposed to test numbers and levels that could not possibly change much in 7 days. The nurses tried to explain that to him on the phone, but he would not listen. My mother got tired of arguing with him, so she went every time. I remembered sitting in my dad's old Volkswagen hatchback when I was younger, waiting while she went into those appointments. When she came back out, my father would ask how it went. Good, she would say every time, her voice tired. I used to wonder if they even did anything in there. Sometimes I imagined my mother sitting with the front desk ladies, gossiping for a while until enough time had passed for my father to believe the doctors had done something useful. But there had been one real emergency when I was about 10. We had rushed to the hospital in the middle of the night. My father held my mother's hand in the front seat while I cried in the back. I remembered the chemical smell of latex and cleaner, the bright hospital lights, and the worried voices of doctors. All of that came back to me as I helped my mother sit down on my bed. After that first hospital visit years ago, she had explained to me that chest pains did not always mean a heart attack. She told me not to panic every time it happened. I tried to remember that as I called 911. I kept my voice steady. I helped her breathe. I told her help was coming. The moon was unusually bright when the paramedics arrived and loaded her onto the stretcher. The light made the yard look pale and unreal, like the whole world had been washed in silver. I rode with her to the hospital. It was my first time inside an ambulance. When they closed the doors behind us, a strange nervousness came over me. The sound of those doors shutting felt final. It felt like a seal being pressed over our lives, trapping us inside a cold, sterile future. At the hospital, I sat alone in the waiting room for what felt like forever. I flipped through old magazines without reading them. There was an AARP magazine on the table, and a worn copy of the Oxbow incident that looked like it had been sitting there for years. I stared at the pages, but the words did not settle in my mind. Finally, a doctor came out and told me my mother had suffered a minor heart attack. She was stable. She would recover, but she needed to stay in the hospital for a few days so they could watch her and make sure she rested. They took me back to her room. She was sleeping when I got there. I sat beside her bed until morning. When the sun began to rise, red and orange light came through the window and spread across the blank white wall. It was the first beautiful thing I had seen in days. I remember staring at it and thinking how wrong it felt that beauty could still exist, while everything in my life was falling apart. After a while, I decided to go home and check on the house. I also had errands to run for my father's funeral, which was only a few days away. It is strange how life keeps moving after something terrible happens. As I rode home in an Uber, I watched other cars on the road. It was 8 in the morning, so most people were probably going to work. I looked through their windows at their ordinary faces, and for some reason, I got angry. It felt wrong that they were allowed to go on with their lives. It felt like they owed my father their sadness, like the whole world should stop and sit in silence for him. Then I remembered that even I could not give him that. When I got back to the house, everything seemed normal from outside. The lawn was still cut. The mailbox was still leaning slightly to one side. The curtains were still drawn the way my mother liked them. But when I opened the back door, water rushed out over the threshold and soaked my shoes and socks. For a few seconds, I just stood there, frozen. Then the stream slowed and I stepped inside. The entire bottom floor was flooded. Water covered the kitchen, the hall, and the living room, rising up to my ankles. It reflected the ceiling lights in broken, trembling lines. I checked under the kitchen sink, then the bathroom, then everywhere else I could think of. Busted pipes, all of them. And they were still running. I ran outside to my father's storage building, my wet shoes squishing with every step. I was shaking as I searched on my phone for how to turn off the main water line. My father would have known exactly what to do. He would have already had the right tool in his hand before I even understood the problem. But I had never touched most of the tools in that building. I fumbled for several awful minutes, panicking and cursing, until somehow I managed to shut the water off. Then I sat in the yard for a while, breathing hard. It did not make sense. My father had had all the pipes checked only a couple of months earlier, just in case. The plumber had said everything was fine. He had even seemed confused about why he had been called at all. And it was the middle of summer, so nothing had frozen. There was no reason for every pipe to break at the same time. I did not know what to do, but I did not want to bother my mother while she was in the hospital. So I rescued what I could. My favorite chair, my mother's fine china, a few boxes that had not yet soaked through. Then I called the first plumbing company I found. They said they could fix the pipes, but I would need a different company for the water damage. A few phone calls later, I got a rough quote of around $25,000. I was not even surprised. Luckily, my father's retirement fund was untouched and could cover it. The workers were supposed to start that afternoon. After gathering what I needed and visiting my mother at the hospital, I got a hotel room. I could not stay in the house until the water was drained and the carpet was pulled up. The contractors warned me that mold could make me sick. The hotel was a Holiday Inn just around the corner. That night, I barely slept. The room felt stale and cold. When I tried to turn up the heat, the thermostat was dead. No matter which buttons I pressed, the screen stayed blank. I lay in bed under thin blankets, shivering slightly, thinking about the pipes. The house was old, yes, but the pipes had been checked. They were fine. So what were the chances that all of them would break at the exact same time, right after my father died? I tried to find a reasonable explanation, but I could not. Still, it had happened, and now it was being fixed. There was nothing to worry about anymore. That was what I told myself. The next morning, after a few hours of poor sleep, I drove back toward the house to pick up more clothes and a few things for my mother. I was about 5 minutes away when a loud bang shook the car. Smoke poured from the front. The gas pedal stopped responding. A loud beeping filled the car, as if I somehow did not already know something was wrong. I looked beyond the steering wheel and saw the check engine light flashing on the dashboard. Great. Luckily, I was already in the neighborhood and there were no other cars around. I pulled over, got out, and opened the hood. The smell of burning metal hit me immediately. Dark, copper-colored fluid was spread around the engine, like lava after a volcanic eruption. Even I could tell the engine was ruined. The tow truck came and took the car away. The driver was a big, burly man who offered to drop me off at the house, and I accepted. When I arrived, the contractors and plumbers were already working. Pieces of carpet, nails, and tools were scattered everywhere. I stepped around them and went upstairs to gather more things. 2 shirts, shorts, 5 pairs of socks, 2 stuffed animals from my childhood, and my mother's favorite blanket. Then I took my father's car and drove back to the hospital. My father's second biggest worry, maybe even his biggest after my mother's health, had always been the cars. He worried about everything related to them: the tires, the oil, the brakes, the battery, the engine. He took each car to the mechanic once a month to have it checked. He had done it just 2 weeks earlier, and everything had been fine. My car was brand new, too. It had been a graduation gift. There was no reason for the engine to blow less than a year after I got it. I was frustrated. More than frustrated. Angry. Why was all of this happening now? Right after Dad was gone? It was starting to feel like a punishment. Like some cruel "I told you so" from beyond the grave. All those worries we had laughed at, all those fears we had brushed aside, were suddenly becoming real one by one. I told my mother about the car and gave her the blanket. She looked tired, but she tried to comfort me anyway. That was my mother. Even in a hospital bed after a heart attack, she was still trying to make me feel better. That night, I went back to the Holiday Inn and fell asleep quickly. The exhaustion from the last few days had finally caught up to me. The next day, I decided to stay mostly at the hotel. I only went out around lunchtime to get food and visit my mother. By evening, I was back in the room, flipping through hotel TV channels. There is never anything good on hotel television. I left an episode of The Big Bang Theory playing in the background while I scrolled on my phone. Then I got a call. It was my mother's doctor. "Is this Ms.?" he asked. I confirmed that it was me. There was a pause. Then he said, "I am very sorry that you have to find out this way, but can you sit down for me?" A sharp pain moved through my chest. "I'm sitting down," I said quickly. "What is it?" The doctor's voice trembled. Your mother has passed away. Her condition worsened very rapidly, and we do not really know what caused it. I am very sorry. We will need... His voice faded from my ears. I stopped hearing him. I could not listen anymore. Fear, grief, dread, and every terrible emotion I had ever felt rose through my body like an earthquake. I had my first and only panic attack when I was 15. It happened on my birthday. I do not remember what caused it, but I remember my father getting angry and telling me I was being dramatic. My mother, though, knelt beside me with a sympathetic look on her face. As I stared at her, a sick feeling came over me. For one terrible moment, I imagined a day when she would not be there anymore. She felt like she was slipping out of my hands, like sand falling into a dark, endless ocean. I could not see her anymore, not really. Then, after a moment, I found her again and grabbed her tightly. You were gone, I sobbed. She held me and told me she was not going anywhere. Now she was gone. She was really gone. I hung up on the doctor without saying another word and ran to the car. I moved like a wild animal, without thought, without reason. I sped out of the hotel parking lot and onto the local highway, weaving between lanes, passing every car I could. I have to get to her. That thought repeated in my head again and again. It was the only thing keeping me together. I have to get to her. I have to be there for her. About 100 yards from the hospital, I pulled out into a busy intersection. The lights from the cars and traffic signals blurred around me. I could see the hospital ahead, bright and precious, holding the place where my mother's body lay. Then I saw a sharp blur through the windshield. After that, nothing. If you have never been in a car wreck, I can tell you it happens just like it does in movies. Everything slows down. The airbags explode in front of you, white and sudden, filling your vision so completely that it feels like you blacked out, even if you did not. Glass hits your face and arms, but you barely feel it because your body is full of adrenaline. The accident was almost the same as the one that had totaled my first car when I was 18. Back then, I had been driving to a friend's house. I pulled out onto the road and got T-boned. It was my fault. After that wreck, our insurance went up, and so did my father's worry. I could not drive 7 minutes to Walmart without him offering to take me himself. Every time I left the house, he told me to be careful, to take my time, to watch for other cars. If he was not home to say it, he called my mother and told her to say it for him. Every driving decision became a wartime strategy. Parking, changing lanes, avoiding potholes, making left turns. If my mother drove with all of us in the car, she and my father usually ended up giving each other the silent treatment because of his constant backseat driving. I felt bad about that first wreck, but I was an adult. I refused to let him police every decision I made. If it had been up to him, there would have been no highways, no unprotected left turns, no night driving, and no risk of any kind. His worried voice echoed in my mind as I came to. I must have passed out for a few seconds. I looked at myself in the rearview mirror. Blood was running down my face from a cut on my forehead. Both of my eyes were already darkening. Someone was outside my door. I could hear a muffled voice asking if I was okay. But I did not care. I was not thinking about the wreck or the car or the people staring. I was only thinking about my mother. I pushed the door open and got out. I was in the middle of the intersection. Headlights shone from every direction. Broken glass and pieces of car were scattered beneath my feet. I have to get to her. I could see the hospital. I started walking, then jogging, my legs weak and shaking. People tried to stop me. They told me to sit down to wait for an ambulance. Someone gently grabbed my arm. I shook them off and snapped something through my tears about my mother. I stumbled through the front entrance of the hospital, bleeding and shaking. Workers and visitors turned to stare at me in shock. Luckily, someone who had seen the wreck came in behind me and explained what happened. I am glad they did, because I would not have been able to say it. The car was totaled, and it was my fault, just like before. Thankfully, the other driver was not hurt. Doctors, nurses, and witnesses handled most of the immediate details. They gave me insurance information, phone numbers, and written instructions for what to do later. I was released a few hours after they gave me 3 stitches in my forehead and pain medication. They also told me more about my mother. It did not make sense to them. She had been expected to recover. She should have been fine. Then her heart just stopped. No warning, no clear reason. Her body would be taken to the funeral home the next day, and I was supposed to be there at 10 in the morning. I could not go back to the hotel. I needed to sleep in my own bed. A nurse kindly dropped me off at the house. The contractors were long gone by then. It was 10 at night, and the street was quiet. I stepped inside, my whole body aching. I went upstairs to take a quick shower. I planned to come back down afterward and make something to eat, so I left the kitchen lights on and the back door unlocked. The hot water felt like the only good thing left in the world. It soothed the scrapes and the bruises that were already turning yellow. I stood under the water and tried not to think about my mother. I could not let myself think about her. Not yet. After I got dressed, I heard the squeak of the screen door opening downstairs. Then footsteps entered the house. I froze. An intruder. Besides my mother or me dying, that had been one of my father's worst fears. Every night, he checked the doors 3 times. He checked the locks before going upstairs. Then he checked them again right away. Then, one final time before bed. He made sure the security bars were in place. He listened for noises. He looked out windows. A few years earlier, he had bought a pistol. Once a month, he went to the shooting range to practice. He taught me how to shoot it, too. Just in case, he always said. I walked to the top of his dresser, where the gun always sat. I grabbed it without thinking. It was matte black, a 9mm. My hands shook violently as I loaded it. Once it was chambered, I moved slowly down the stairs. When I reached the landing, I saw a figure in the darkness near the kitchen. The person was holding something. My breath caught in my throat. Before they could move, I fired. 1 bullet to the head. The figure fell backward onto the new hardwood floor with a heavy thud. Something shattered. I rushed down the rest of the stairs and flipped on the light as I passed. The hallway light showed me the truth. It was Mrs. Alice, my neighbor. She was dead. No question. A small hole in her forehead leaked red down her face. Shit, shit, shit. Broken pieces of a ceramic bowl lay scattered around her. The blue and purple design was soaked with blood and warm food. When I looked closer, I saw noodles spread across the floor. A casserole. She had brought me a casserole. I stared at her face. Blood had gathered in the wrinkles around her eyes and across her forehead. Her mouth was slightly curved, almost like she had still been smiling when she came in. She must have seen the door unlocked and stepped inside to look for me. She had probably called my name, but too quietly for me to hear from upstairs. She had been happy to find me. She had come to comfort me. She was dead before she even saw the gun. Everything that would happen next flashed through my mind. The 911 call, the police, the questions, the trial. The reporters, the neighbors whispering, the judge asking why I had shot an old woman who was bringing me food. They would never believe me. Why would I think she was a threat? Why did I shoot so fast? Why did I not call out? Why did I not wait? I was grieving. I was hurt. I was exhausted. It had been, by a million miles, the worst week of my life. But I had killed an old woman in cold blood. That would not be enough. Then I heard the screen door open again. Someone ran inside. It was Tony, the man who lived beside us. He stopped when he saw Mrs. Alice on the floor, his face twisted in horror. And then he looked up at me. I looked back at him with a blank stare, my mouth open slightly. I still had the gun in my hand. There was no going back. I sat down on the stairs while he called 911. Soon, sirens filled the street. Red and blue lights flashed through the windows, washing over Mrs. Alice's lifeless body. The Ring camera captured everything. Mrs. Alice walking slowly into the house. Mrs. Alice calling my name just quietly enough that I could not hear her. The muffled gunshot? Her body falling? My father had installed the cameras just in case. But who cares now? My father is gone. My mother is gone. The pipes burst. The cars failed. The heart stopped. The crash happened. The intruder came through the unlocked door. Every fear he ever carried for us became real the moment he was no longer here to fear it first. And now there is nothing left. Story 4. I have made a terrible mistake. To be more honest, I have made more than one terrible mistake. I made a whole chain of them, one after another, and each one pushed me closer to where I am now. Now I am trapped in a situation I do not understand, with no clean way out of it. The only thing I can do is keep going and hope I somehow come through this without losing whatever is left of myself. But every day that hope feels weaker. I should probably slow down and explain what I mean before I go any further. Otherwise, none of this will make sense. As I have gotten older, I have become deeply interested in old and forgotten media. Interested might not even be the right word. Obsessed is closer. There is something about outdated formats that pulls me in. Things from my childhood, things that used to be normal but are now disappearing, make me feel like I'm holding little pieces of time in my hands. Technology moves so fast now. Everything becomes digital, clean, and easy. Old formats get left behind and people throw them away like they never mattered. I have never been able to do that. I collect old video games, CDs, cassette tapes, old magazines, comic books from companies that no longer exist, and anything else that feels like it is slipping out of the world. But my real love has always been video formats. VHS tapes, mini DVs, DVDs, Betamax tapes, old discs, hard drives, floppy disks if they have video files on them, and almost anything else that once held moving images. If someone ever used it to record a video, I probably have at least one example of it somewhere in my basement. My collection has grown far beyond what a normal person would call reasonable. At first, it was only a shelf. Then it became a corner. Then a whole wall. Now a large part of my basement has been swallowed by boxes, plastic cases, wires, adapters, old players, blank tapes, labeled tapes, unlabeled tapes, and machines that most people would not even know how to plug in. It looks messy to other people, but to me, it is an archive, a private museum, a place where dead formats can still breathe. Saturday mornings have always been my favorite part of the week because that is when I visit the thrift stores near me. I go from one shop to another, checking shelves, digging through boxes, opening dusty drawers, and asking owners if they have anything in the back. Most weekends, I come home with at least one new piece for the collection. Sometimes it is a movie recorded off television 30 years ago, with old commercials still trapped between scenes. Sometimes it is a wedding video, a birthday party, a school play, or a family vacation belonging to strangers I will never meet. I have always liked those most. There is something strange and sad about watching someone else's memories after they have been forgotten by everyone who lived them. That was how all of this started. One Saturday morning, during one of my usual thrift store trips, I made the first mistake in the series of choices that brought me here. I arrived at one of my regular spots and found a large cardboard box waiting for me on the counter. The box was old and soft around the edges, the kind of cardboard that looks like it has spent years in a damp closet. One side sagged inward. The tape holding the bottom looked weak. Even before I opened it, I could see old tapes and cases stacked inside. The store owner was a friend of mine. She knew about my hobby and often saved things for me if she thought I would want them. She told me the box had come from an estate sale. Nobody had claimed it. Nobody had wanted to buy it. It was going to be thrown away or dropped off at a thrift store, and through a bit of luck, it had ended up with her. She said she had not put it out for sale because she immediately thought of me. She also did not know how to price it because the contents were strange and mixed together. Then she told me I could have the whole thing for free if I wanted it. Of course I wanted it. I accepted before I even looked through it properly. That was my first mistake. The second mistake was taking it home. I carried the box to my car like it was a treasure chest. It was heavier than it looked. When I got home, I brought it straight down to the basement and placed it in front of my media station. That station is not pretty. It is really just a large mess of old screens, players, cables, adapters, converters, and power strips. But it works. If something can play a tape, disc, card, or strange forgotten format, I have probably found a way to connect it there. I opened the box and started going through it. That was mistake number 3. Inside were video formats of almost every kind. VHS tapes, mini DVs, DVDs, CD-ROMs, SD cards, thumb drives, and a few things I did not recognize right away. Each piece had a label. Some were written in marker, some were printed. Some looked like they had been typed on an old label maker. The titles were simple, but strange. I assumed they described what was on each tape or drive. Later, I learned that assumption was right. There were so many of them that I felt overwhelmed almost immediately. I loved finding new media, but this was not 1 or 2 pieces. This was a whole collection. Watching everything would take hours, maybe days. If I wanted to convert the footage, organize it, and archive it properly, it would take even longer. So I did what I now wish I had kept doing forever. I put the box aside. For almost a month, it sat in my basement untouched. I saw it every time I went down there, but I kept telling myself I would get to it later. I had work. I had other tapes to sort. I was tired. I did not have the energy to start such a large project. The box waited quietly in the corner like it was patient. Returning to it was mistake number 4. If I had left it there to rot in the basement, I would have been better off. If I had forgotten about it under a pile of other boxes, I might still be the person I used to be. But I did not leave it alone. Eventually, curiosity won. It always does with people like me. One evening, I went down to the basement and pulled the box back toward my media station. I still did not know where to begin, so I chose something at random from the top. It was an old tape. I placed it into the player, turned on the screen, and watched. By the time the first video ended, I knew I had found something terrible. I also knew in some strange way that I was not going to stop. That is hard to explain. It was not simple curiosity anymore. It felt more like the tape had opened a door, and once that door was open, I had to look through it. I knew what I had seen was wrong. I knew I should take the tape out, put it back in the box, and walk away, but I did not. My hand moved almost without thought. I picked another video, then another, then another. I watched tapes, discs, cards, and drives across different formats. I watched until my eyes hurt, and the basement felt colder than it should have. I cannot describe the contents of those videos in detail here, not yet. A quick summary would not be enough, and I do not think I could explain them properly without giving each one its own space. But I can tell you what those videos did to me. They changed me. That might sound dramatic, but it is the truth. The person who first sat down in that basement and pressed play is gone now. I cannot go back to being him. I have seen things that have settled inside my mind like poison. I spend every day wishing I had left that box on the counter at the thrift store. I would give almost anything to undo the moment I said yes. At first, I told myself the first tape had to be fake. What I saw was too awful and too impossible to accept as real. It had to be some kind of strange art project or an underground horror film or a piece of fiction made by someone with too much skill and a very sick imagination. That explanation was easier to live with. But as I watched more of the videos, that explanation began to fall apart. The footage did not feel staged. The fear in it did not feel acted. The details were too strange, too small, and too ugly in the way real things are ugly. And beyond the videos themselves, other things began happening. Things that made it harder to pretend this was only a collection of disturbing films. The first thing I noticed was the feeling in the room when one of the videos played. The basement changed. I do not mean the lights flickered or the walls moved, though sometimes the shadows did seem wrong. I mean the air itself felt heavier. A dark pressure would settle over the room, slow and creeping, like something had lowered itself down from the ceiling and was watching over my shoulder. I would become aware of the space behind me. I would feel like I was no longer alone, even though I knew no one else was in the house. Then I noticed the formats were wrong. Several videos were stored on media that should not have been able to hold them in that way. Some footage looked modern, sharp, and high definition, but it was on old VHS tapes or mini DVs. Some of the older-looking footage, with grain and sound that suggested it had been filmed decades ago, was stored on newer SD cards and thumb drives. At first, I thought whoever had put the collection together must have converted the files between formats. That would be odd, but not impossible. Someone could transfer digital footage to a tape. Someone could copy an old tape to a flash drive. Collectors do that all the time. But the more I watched, the less sense that made. You can transfer modern video onto an old tape, but the old format should still limit the quality. A VHS tape should not play crisp footage that looks like it was filmed yesterday on expensive modern equipment. The resolution should drop. The image should soften. The tape should show its age. But some of these tapes did not. They showed modern footage in impossible clarity. Some even had timestamps from only a few years ago. I cannot explain that. No normal process should allow it. I know enough about old formats to know what is possible and what is not. And this was not possible. The only explanation that makes sense to me is also the one I hate most. I think the videos have been close together for too long. I think something about them, something unnatural, has caused them to bleed into each other. The footage has moved, shifted, melted across formats. Scenes have somehow rematerialized where they do not belong, trapped on the wrong tapes, discs and cards. I know how insane that sounds. I know it should not be real. But when I sit in that basement and look at that box, I can feel that it is true. The next thing that proved something was wrong was what happened when I tried to copy or convert the footage. I could not do it. My computer is expensive. I built it for exactly this kind of work. I have capture devices, adapters, software, and enough storage to archive more footage than most people will ever watch. But none of it works with this collection. When I try to capture a video from the older formats, my computer either refuses to recognize the signal or it records only gray noise. Not static, exactly. Not the normal kind. Just thick gray movement as if the video is being hidden behind a wall of ash. The newer digital formats are even stranger. The flash drives, SD cards, and disks do not show normal files. There are no folders, no .mp4 files, no file names, no way to copy anything. When I insert one into my computer, the video begins playing immediately in full screen, like I have placed a DVD into a television player. I cannot exit, I cannot minimize, I cannot access the desktop. The keyboard stops responding. The mouse disappears. The video plays until I remove the device. So I cannot digitize them, I cannot upload them, I cannot share the footage itself. I cannot watch them anywhere except on the formats where I found them. For several days after realizing this, I left the box alone again. I let it sit in the basement while I tried to understand what had happened to me. I walked around the house feeling like there was a dark stain on my mind. I went to work, ate food, answered messages, and pretended to be normal. But the video stayed with me. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw pieces of them. Faces. Rooms. Places that should not exist. Things that should not move. People who should not have been there. I considered throwing the whole collection away. For a brief moment, it seemed like the obvious answer. Put everything in a trash bag. Drive it somewhere far away. Drop it in a dumpster and never look back. But even as the thought came to me, I knew I would not do it. I could not just release the collection into the world again. What if someone else found it? What if some teenager picked it up out of a dumpster? What if another collector like me bought it for a few dollars and took it home? I could not let someone else open that box and feel what I had felt. I could not let this become someone else's burden. The videos were mine now. I do not mean that in a proud way. I mean they had become my responsibility. Whether I wanted them or not, I was now part of whatever they were. I had opened the box. I had watched the footage. I had let the knowledge inside me. That could not be undone. I also could not take them to the authorities. What would I say? That I found a cursed collection of impossible videos at a thrift store. That the footage inside showed things too terrible to explain. At best, they would think it was all fake. At worst, they would start asking questions about me. Where did I get the videos? Why did I keep watching them? Why did I not report them sooner? Did I know the people in them? Did I make them? I do not have answers that would satisfy anyone. And even if the authorities somehow believed me, even if they understood the footage was real and that I had nothing to do with making it, handing the collection over would still feel wrong. I cannot explain that feeling clearly. It is like my role would be unfinished. Like I would be passing on something that had chosen me or that I had chosen by taking it home. Maybe that makes no sense. Maybe that is exactly what the collection wants me to think. But the feeling is there, and it is strong. So I am left with almost no options. I could try to destroy the videos, but I am afraid of what might happen. That sounds ridiculous, I know. They are tapes and cards and discs. They should burn or break like anything else. But after what I have seen, I do not believe they are just objects anymore. They feel like containers, and if something evil is held inside them, what happens if I break the container? I cannot share the footage because it cannot be copied. I cannot give it away because that would be cruel. I cannot throw it out, and I cannot leave it in a box in my basement and pretend it does not exist. I tried that already. It does not work. The knowledge burns in my mind. It sits there every day, eating through my thoughts. If I do nothing, I think it will eventually hollow me out completely. That is why I have decided to do the only thing I can still do. I'm going to transcribe the videos. I'm going to write down what happens in them and archive those writings here for others to read. Maybe that is selfish. Maybe spreading even a written version of this footage is wrong. Maybe no one should know what I know. But I need relief. I need the burden to leave my mind, even if only a little. I need to place it somewhere outside myself because keeping it inside is destroying me. I do not know if anyone will read this first entry. Part of me hopes nobody does. If you are reading this, I am sorry. Truly. I would be happy if this archive stayed buried. If I could simply imagine that someone had seen it and that the weight was no longer mine alone. But if you keep reading after this, you should understand what you are stepping into. These are not normal videos. They are not stories made to entertain you. They are not horror films, not hoaxes, not art. They are records of something that should not have been recorded and maybe should not exist at all. Watching them has changed me. Writing about them may change me further. Reading about them might do the same to you. So I am apologizing now before I begin. If reading about the footage is even half as bad as watching it, then you're about to step into a nightmare that you may never fully wake up from. Story 5. I work the night shift at a gas station off Highway 231 in L.A. And by L.A., I do not mean Los Angeles. I mean Lower Alabama, where the roads go dark fast, the pine trees press close to the highway, and every lighted gas station after midnight feels like the last safe place before the world turns empty. I am not going to name the store because technically I still work there. I am supposed to go in tomorrow night. My manager has already texted me twice, asking if I can also cover Ms. Teague's shift because she had a personal emergency. In retail, that is what personal emergencies become. They are not problems, they are scheduling opportunities. And before anyone asks why I do not just quit, rent is due on the 10th. The light bill does not care if you are scared. The landlord does not pause the month because something strange is happening to you. Fear does not pay for groceries. So I stayed longer than I should have. And now I do not know if leaving is enough. I am writing this because I do not know what else to do. The first time I saw the total, I thought it was funny. That was my first mistake. It was around 2:40 in the morning. Anyone who has worked nights at a gas station knows that hour. It is not peaceful, even when nothing is happening. It is dead in a different way. The coolers hum like they are thinking. The floor stays sticky no matter how many times you mop it. The hot dogs spin slowly under those orange little bulbs, looking like evidence from a crime scene nobody wants to talk about. Outside, the highway goes quiet for long stretches. Then suddenly a car or truck passes and is gone again. A trucker came in wearing flip-flops and a cat hat. He looked tired, the way all truckers look at that hour, like sleep was chasing him but never catching up. He bought a black coffee, a honey bun, and prepaid diesel on pump 4. When I rang it up, the total came to $6.66. He looked at the screen and laughed. "Well, hell," he said. "Guess I'm buying breakfast for the devil." I laughed too, because what else are you supposed to do at 2:40 in the morning when a stranger makes the exact joke anyone would make? It was just a number, a stupid number on a register screen. I had seen people get excited over totals like $7.77 or $12.34. Customers always act like a weird number means something. I did not think much of it. Then the receipt printer clicked 3 times before printing. Tap, tap, tap. It did not sound broken. It sounded careful. It sounded like knuckles on glass. Then the receipt came out. At first, I thought the printer had jammed. The paper just kept feeding. Not long like a coupon receipt. Not long like those drugstore receipts that look like they could wrap around your ankle. This was longer. It curled over the counter, dropped to the floor, and kept going. I had to grab it with both hands to keep it from rolling under the cigarette rack. The first part looked normal. Coffee, honey bun, diesel prepay on pump 4. Total, $6.66. Then there was a long blank space. At the very bottom, one line had printed. Customer acknowledged. Trucker stopped smiling when I showed it to him. His whole face changed. He did not ask for his coffee. He did not take the honey bun. He did not go outside and pump the diesel. He just turned and walked out of the store. I watched him climb into his rig and pull back onto Highway 231 with his headlights off. That bothered me more than the receipt did. People forget coffee all the time. People get creeped out by little things and leave. But nobody drives a semi onto a dark highway with no headlights unless something inside them has slipped out of place. There was another thing, too, something I did not think about hard enough until later. A coffee and a honey bun do not leave enough room in a 6x66 total for diesel. Not enough to make sense. And I did not remember ringing up pump 4. I checked the journal tape twice after he left. The register had added it by itself. I threw the receipt in the trash and told myself it was a glitch. Pump 4 stayed authorized. At 3:16 in the morning, it turned on by itself. I heard the handle click from inside the store. That sound is normal when somebody lifts the nozzle. It is not normal when the pump island is empty and the security monitor shows nothing but bugs flying at the canopy lights. I looked at the screen. Pump 4 was running. It counted up to $6.66. Then it stopped. I went outside because I am apparently the kind of man who investigates haunted gasoline for $14.75 an hour. There was no truck there, no person, no hose lying on the ground. The nozzle was in its place. But gasoline was spilled on the concrete in 3 small streaks. They looked like claw marks. I stood there staring at them for longer than I want to admit. Then I mopped them up, bagged the trash, and told myself the pump had glitched. The equipment was old. Register 2 froze if you scanned beef jerky too fast. The ice machine made a noise like a dying goat every time it dropped a new batch. A pump acting strange was not exactly impossible. So I restocked the roller grill because hot dogs have a par level, and the par level does not care what you just saw. Morning shift came in at 6. That was Ms. Teague. Ms. Teague has worked there forever. She is in her 60s, maybe older, but nobody says that out loud. She smokes misty cigarettes behind the dumpster and knows everybody's mama, everybody's warrants, everybody's favorite scratch-off tickets, and whether your debit card is going to decline before you even swipe it. She has the kind of face that looks tired from seeing too much and patient from knowing it will keep happening anyway. She took one look at me and said, "You've seen it." I had not told her anything. I said, "Seen what?" She pointed at the trash can behind the counter. The receipt I had thrown away was sitting on top. It was not crumpled anymore. It was folded neatly, like church clothes. I said, "That's not funny." She said, "No, it ain't." Then she opened the register drawer, took out a penny, and slid it across the counter to me. The penny was black. Not dirty, not tarnished. Black, like it had been burned and polished until it shined in the wrong way. "Don't take change from it," she said. "From what?" I asked. She just looked at me for a long second. Then the receipt printer clicked. Tap, tap, tap. It printed one blank strip of paper. At the bottom it said, "Clerk acknowledged." Miss Teague closed her eyes like someone had just given her bad news she had been expecting for 30 years. "You laughed, didn't you?" she asked. I did not answer. She did not need me to. For the next week I saw 666 everywhere. I know how that sounds. I know about pattern recognition. I know that once your brain notices something, it starts pulling it from the world like a kid finding pennies in a couch. I know people see signs where there are none, especially when they are tired and scared. But this was not that. This was my phone showing 666 for 1 second before switching to 707. This was the freezer inventory printing 666 units when we maybe had 200 items total. This was a woman buying gas on pump 6 lottery tickets and 6 cans of cat food, then looking me dead in the face and asking, "Did that make it easier for you to see me?" I asked her what she meant. She smiled too wide and too long. Her gums were gray like old receipt paper. Then she walked out without paying. The registers still approved the transaction. Customer acknowledged. That Thursday, somebody posted pictures on the county Facebook page of a semi sitting abandoned on the shoulder of Highway 231 south of town. Doors open, no driver. The cab packed ankle deep with receipt paper. Everybody in the comments said it was meth. I recognized the cat hat on the dash. That was when I started taking pictures. That was my next mistake. At first, it felt like proof. I am a practical person. I like evidence. You can tell me you feel haunted all day, and I will still want a timestamp, a camera angle, and the name of somebody else who saw it. So I made a folder on my phone. I called it 666 Bullshit. That was probably disrespectful. By day 3, the folder had 66 pictures. I had not taken all of them. Some were screenshots of my lock screen at impossible times. Some were pictures of receipts from angles I could not have taken unless I had been standing behind the register, while also being at home in bed. One picture was of me sleeping on my couch. The flash was on. My mouth was open. The black penny was sitting on my tongue. I woke up choking. The penny was on the coffee table, dry, warm. I called Miss Teague after that. She answered like she had been waiting. "You took pictures," she said. I did not even get to say hello. "How do I stop this?" I asked. "Stop feeding it." "What is it?" "You don't ask that." "Ms. Teague, I woke up with a penny in my mouth." "You took it from the drawer?" "You handed it to me." "I showed it to you," she said. "You picked it up." I remembered her sliding it across the counter. I remembered it clearly. But then I remembered something else. I remembered telling myself not to touch it. Then I remembered it in my hand. That scared me worse than the photo. Memory is supposed to belong to you. It can be wrong, sure. It can get fuzzy. It can be changed by pride, fear, sleep, shame, or whatever liquor your uncle brings to Thanksgiving. But it should still feel like yours. This did not. This felt like someone else had signed my name on a form before I even got to read what I was agreeing to. Miss Teague told me to delete the pictures. I did. The folder emptied. Then my phone buzzed. 66 files restored. I deleted them again. Restored. I factory reset the phone. When it came back on, the wallpaper had changed to a picture of Pump 4. The photo had been taken from inside my apartment, through my bedroom window. I lived 12 miles from the store. That afternoon, I drove to Ms. Teague's house. I know showing up at an older woman's house without being invited sounds bad. I understand that. But when your phone starts taking pictures of gas pumps through impossible windows, manners get shoved into the glove box. She lived in a small brick house outside town. There were plastic geese on the porch, dressed like it was still Easter. Those geese bothered me. I do not know why. Maybe because everything else felt serious and terrible. And there they were, in tiny bonnets, fully committed to the joke. Miss Teague met me on the porch before I could knock. "You shouldn't have come here," she said. "I need help. You brought it with you." Behind her, something inside the house knocked 3 times. Not at the door. Inside the wall. Tap, tap, tap. Miss Teague looked tired enough to fall through the porch boards. She reached into her apron pocket and handed me an old receipt. It was dated June 6, 1996. Same store, same pump, same total. $6.06. At the bottom it said, "Cashier acknowledged." Her name was printed beneath it, M.U. Teague. I was young, she said. Young and dumb enough to think evil would announce itself bigger. What does that mean? It means people expect horn, she said. Latin words, floating beds, something useful enough to believe in. She nodded toward my pocket where my phone felt heavy as a brick. Most times, it starts smaller. A number, a smell. A thought that doesn't feel like yours until it says something smart. Then what does it want? To get paid. The knocking came again. 3 taps. Miss Teague looked toward the wall like she could see exactly where the sound was standing. "It can scare you all night long," she said. "It can turn your house mean. It can spoil your sleep. It can borrow your mouth. It can make everybody around you think you're crazy. But it can't take the part that matters. It has to be paid." What am I supposed to pay it? You're thinking money because you're still lucky. My phone buzzed. The message came from an unknown number. "She cannot void you." I dropped the phone. Miss Teague saw the screen. Her mouth tightened. "It's using your words yet?" she asked. I said no. Then I thought, don't lie to her. The thought was not mine. It was calm, helpful, almost friendly. I grabbed the porch rail so hard my fingers hurt. Miss Teague said, "There it is." I asked her what happened next. She told me it did not happen all at once. "It invoices you in pieces," she said. "First signs, then missing time, then words, then hands. What comes after hands?" She looked over my shoulder toward the road. "The person becomes the receipt." I wanted to ask what that meant. I did not. Some questions feel like handles, and I was already afraid of giving it something to grab. That night, I tried to stay awake. I turned on every light in my apartment. Living room, kitchen, bathroom, bedroom, even the closet light. It felt stupid until I thought about turning it off again. And then it did not feel stupid at all. I put the black penny in a glass of salt water because the internet told me salt helps. The internet also told me rubbing toothpaste on headlights works, so I knew I was not exactly working with expert demon control, but it was all I had. At 3:16 in the morning, every light went out. Not the power, just the lights. The TV stayed on. My phone stayed charging. The microwave clock stayed lit. 6:66. I sat on the couch and stared at it. Something tapped inside the microwave 3 times. I did not move. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. You are doing well. Then another message came through. Count them. I turned the phone face down. It buzzed again. Count them. Then the microwave tapped. Then the window. Then the bathroom mirror. Then something under the couch. I put my hands over my ears like a child. That was when I heard myself whisper, 6. I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. My mouth whispered again. 6. I clamped both hands over it. My throat moved anyway. 6. Everything stopped. The lights came back on. The glass of salt water on the coffee table was empty. The penny was gone. On the inside of the glass, something had scratched one word. Acknowledged. Then my phone buzzed one more time. Balance due. 0.01. I sat there shaking, and some cold little part of my brain still did the math. It had pulled words out of my throat like they were tied to a string, and the balance had not changed. Whatever it took from my mouth did not count, because it had taken it. Ms. Teague's rule was still true. It could not take. It had to be given. And the glass only said acknowledged, not paid. It kept separate books. That should have made me feel better. It did not. It meant the thing had rules, and it was following them. I called 911. I told them someone was in my apartment. That was the only version I could say without being transferred to the kind of help that does not bring weapons. 2 officers came out. They checked every room. One of them was young and polite. The other looked like he would rather be wrestling a meth head behind Dollar General than listening to me explain scratches in a drinking glass. They found no one. No forced entry, no footprints, no fingerprints on the glass except mine. The older cop asked if I had been sleeping. I said not much. He asked if I had taken anything. I said no. He looked at the empty energy drink cans on my counter, the vape by the sink, my store uniform hanging over a chair, and me standing there barefoot at 4 in the morning with blood on my tongue. He did not say what he thought. He was professional enough to let silence do it for him. When they left, the young officer came back to the door. He held out a penny. "You dropped this by the couch," he said. I told him it was not mine. He glanced at it. Then his expression changed. "What the hell?" The penny was black. The year stamped on it was 0666. I told him not to take it. He laughed. It was nervous, not mean. Then he flipped it toward me. I did not catch it. It hit the floor between us and spun for too long. When it finally stopped, it landed standing on its edge. The officer stopped laughing. His radio crackled. A voice came through. It was not dispatch. It was mine. Customer acknowledged. The officer backed away from my door. I do not blame him. I would have backed away from me too. Yesterday morning, Ms. Teague did not show up for her shift. My manager called me because apparently I am now the emergency contact for everyone else's emergencies. I drove to the store even though I was not scheduled. Pump 4 was bagged, out of order. Somebody had written on the bag in black marker, "Not out," just those 2 words. Inside, Register 2 was printing receipts nonstop. Blank paper covered the floor. Hundreds of strips curled around the counter, the hot food case, the cigarette rack, and the lottery machine. It looked like the store had tried to toilet paper itself and then given up halfway through. Every receipt said the same thing. Balance due. 0.01. Clerk acknowledged. I went into the back office to shut off the printer. The security monitor was on. It showed the live camera feeds. Front counter, beer cooler, pump island, dumpster, office. On the office camera, I saw myself, standing behind me. I turned around so fast I knocked over a stack of vendor invoices. No one was there. On the monitor, the camera version of me leaned close to my ear. I felt breath. Warm. Real. My own voice whispered, 1 cent is consent. I ran. I ran past the chips, past the motor oil, past the jerky display. I want to tell you I did something smart on the way. I want to say I hit the emergency stop for the pumps, grabbed a fire extinguisher, or pulled the alarm. But all I did was run. I made it to the sales floor before the front doors clicked and held shut. The receipt printer stopped. All the lights flickered once. Then pump 4 turned on. The bag over the nozzle moved like something under it was breathing. Gasoline began spilling onto the concrete outside. It did not spray. It poured slow and even, like someone was tipping a can and did not want to waste a drop. It ran in a thin line across the pump island, under the locked doors and into the store. Gasoline should not move uphill. This did. It came straight to register 2 and circled my shoes. Then the register display lit up. Add 0.1 mile to complete transaction? Yes. No, I hit no. The screen blinked. Yes. No, I hit no again. The gasoline around my shoes warmed. It did not catch fire. It just warmed, like bathwater. The screen changed. Card declined. Then, try another form of payment. The cash drawer popped open. Inside was 1 black penny. I had left it at home on my kitchen counter. I knew that the way you know your own name. But it was in the drawer anyway. I did not touch it. I picked up the whole cash drawer and threw it through the front door. The glass cracked, but it did not break. The pennies stayed in the drawer, sitting upright in its little coin slot like it had manners. Behind me, something laughed. It was not loud. It was not deep. It was not demonic. Demonic would have helped. Demonic would have made sense. It was my laugh. The laugh from the first night. The one I gave away for free. Then the doors opened. I ran to my truck, drove home, and I have not been back. It let me go. That is the part I keep thinking about. It could have kept the doors locked. It could have made the gasoline burn. It could have used my voice again. But then I remember what Ms. Teague told me on her porch. It cannot take me. It can only increase the pressure until I pay. Locked doors, warm gasoline, my own laugh coming from behind me. That was not an attack. That was a salesman closing. My manager has called 6 times. His last voicemail said the floor was clean, the glass was not cracked, and the camera showed me walking out as calm as any Tuesday. He said he would kindly like to know why the cash drawer was sitting on the sidewalk. The floor was clean. Of course it was. The store number is called 66 times, a restricted number called 2. Nobody spoke. I listened to a receipt printer clicking somewhere on the other end until the line went dead. Ms. Teague's daughter called last. She said her mother was in the hospital, dehydrated and confused, asking for me. She said the nurses kept changing the bed sheets because they kept finding paper in them. Blank strips. Thermal paper, slick and curled, the kind that comes off a register roll. Housekeeping had changed the sheets 3 times that day, and nobody could explain where it was coming from. She said her mother kept telling the nurses that she tried to avoid it. The nurses thought it was the dehydration talking. Then her daughter asked if I had the penny. I said no. She said, She says not to lie where it can hear you. I looked at my kitchen counter. The black penny was sitting beside my keys. I hung up. That was 2 hours ago. Since then, I have been typing this. I can still smell gasoline in my shoelaces. My tongue still hurts where I bit it. My mama texted me a scripture Sunday, like she always does. I did not answer it. I have become very careful about what I answer. My manager just texted again about tomorrow's schedule, like the world is still a place where schedules matter. I do not think posting this will save me. I need to be honest about that. This is not a clever plan. I am not trying to trick a demon with a post on the internet, which is a sentence so stupid it almost makes me miss being a normal idiot with normal problems. But Ms. Teague told me something else on her porch. She said attention feeds it, but agreement feeds it better. There is a difference. Seeing the number is not agreement. Laughing at it might be. Counting it might be. Taking pictures definitely is. Picking up the penny is. Saying yes is. And I know what all of you reading this count as. You are attention. Thousands of little taps on the glass. I cannot help that now. So I am asking you plainly. Do not become agreement. Reading is attention. Answering it is agreement. If it says something to you, and I think it might, do not answer it. The trucker lasted 4 days. Ms. Teague has lasted 30 years. I think the difference is that he answered it. I have not said yes. Not yet. That is why I'm posting here instead of checking myself into a hospital, walking into a church, or driving until my truck runs out of gas. I need people who understand strange things to tell me what to do before I make the next mistake. Because the total is still short. 1 cent. That is what it wants from me. Not money. Not really. Permission. I can feel it now. That is the part I hate admitting. I can feel it arranging thoughts in my head before I think them. Practical thoughts. Helpful thoughts. Thoughts in my own voice. Go back to the store. Finish the transaction. Void the fear. Balance the drawer. Make it clean. I keep looking at the penny. It is closer than it was when I started typing. I know that sounds impossible. I also know I have not moved it. It was beside my keys. Now it is beside my laptop. The microwave just changed to 666. It is 11:42 p.m. Something knocked under the table 3 times. I am not going to count them. I am not going to pick up the penny. I am not going to say yes. But I need to go to the bathroom, and the hallway light just went out. My phone buzzed while I was writing that sentence. Unknown number. Take the penny with you. Then another message came through. This one was from Ms. Teague's daughter. All it said was, Mom woke up. She says don't read the comments.